And now the real weight of everything Kyrie hinted at begins to settle in. Because when someone who lived through one of the most scrutinized eras in NBA history finally says the full story is coming, it forces the entire basketball world to sit up a little straighter. Fans who once dismissed him as emotional or difficult suddenly realize they may have been arguing against a version of events crafted by people who had far more to gain from a one-sided narrative. And if Kyrie truly does unleash everything he has kept locked away, the aftermath won't just reshape opinion on the 2016 Cavaliers. It could ripple through the league's most sacred mythology, exposing realities that many never imagined. People forget just how much pressure was placed on Kyrie the moment LeBron returned. Overnight, he went from a young star learning to lead, to a co-star expected to sacrifice every instinct he had built in order to fit into someone else's structure. The offense changed. The play style changed. Even the locker room hierarchy shifted before he ever had a chance to voice how he wanted the team to grow. And yet, through all the shifting power dynamics, Kyrie continued delivering on the court. Big shots, impossible finishes, elite spacing, deadly fourth-quarter execution. He was the perfect complement to LeBron's system, even if that system never made space for who he was becoming. And that tension, that quiet internal conflict, has followed him for nearly a decade. But now, seeing him at peace in Dallas, playing some of the most controlled and joyful basketball of his career, makes his honesty hit even harder. Because when someone finds clarity, it becomes easier to look back and recognize where things went wrong. He isn't speaking from resentment anymore. He's speaking from understanding. Understanding of the politics, understanding of the media bias, understanding of how narratives are crafted long before games are played, and understanding of how much pressure he carried without ever being given the space to say what the experience was really like. The deeper he goes into the story, the clearer the contrast becomes between his journey and LeBron's towering public image. LeBron has always been surrounded by a fortress of controlled messaging, polished stories, and predetermined angles that ensure he remains at the center of every narrative. Kyrie, on the other hand, has spent years existing outside of that protective bubble, absorbing the full force of public criticism with nobody filtering or protecting his image. That imbalance created a distorted cultural memory of their partnership, one that placed the spotlight squarely on LeBron while leaving Kyrie to deal with the fallout whenever things went wrong. And the moment Kyrie left Cleveland, that imbalance became even clearer. Suddenly, he was labeled the villain, the troublemaker, the problem the Cavaliers couldn't contain. Every setback he endured afterward was framed as proof that he needed LeBron to succeed. Meanwhile, the same people shaping that story ignored the fact that Kyrie had been carrying elite workloads on offense, mentoring younger teammates, taking on leadership responsibilities, and playing through injuries with almost no recognition. The critics never acknowledged the pressure he carried because the storyline had already been chosen for him. Yet through all the chaos, there was always a quiet truth lingering just beneath the surface. Kyrie wasn't running from LeBron. He was running toward his own identity, one he never had the chance to fully embrace in Cleveland. And now that he has matured into a player who understands his value without needing validation, he seems more prepared than ever to finally reveal the truth. Not out of anger, not to start a feud, but to reclaim the pieces of his story that were overshadowed by a narrative carefully designed to make one person look untouchable. And that's what makes this moment so historic. When Kyrie speaks in full detail, it won't just be another interview. It will be a release of hidden chapters that basketball fans have been arguing about for nearly a decade. Details about the locker room dynamic. Details about the internal politics. Details about how championship credit was distributed. Details about how certain narratives were pushed to protect reputations. Details about the moments that shaped the relationship far beyond anything the cameras ever showed. The world often forgets that Kyrie was barely in his mid-20s during the height of all this. A young star forced to navigate media storms, locker room politics, and global pressure while trying to find out who he was as both a player and a person. And through all the twists and turns, he never truly aired his side of the story. He swallowed criticism, absorbed blame, and moved forward without firing back, even when narratives became more damaging than any mistake he ever made on the court. That kind of restraint doesn't come from weakness. It comes from maturity, patience, and a long-term understanding that the truth always circles back in its own time. And that time is almost here. As Kyrie steps into the final chapters of his career, the freedom to speak without fear of backlash is becoming more valuable than ever. He no longer depends on anyone to control the narrative for him. He has built a legacy separate from Cleveland, separate from LeBron, separate from the politics that once surrounded him. He has a championship outside that system, the respect of his peers, and the clarity of someone who has already survived the worst the public could throw at him. So when he finally decides to speak freely, it won't be filtered, it won't be softened, and it won't be controlled by any machine built to protect someone else's legacy. That's why his one promise, "The real story is coming," sent shockwaves through the basketball world. Because people know Kyrie has receipts. People know Kyrie was there for every closed-door conversation. People know Kyrie isn't afraid to break down myths that fans worship like gospel. And when the truth comes out, the landscape of how we understand the Cavaliers era may shift permanently. But the most important part of all this is that Kyrie's voice finally gets to stand on its own. Not as an accessory to a larger superstar, not as a narrative tool, and not as a scapegoat for moments blown out of proportion. His story will finally belong to him. And when he shares it, every myth, every misconception, and every carefully edited narrative will have to face the reality of what actually happened. So now the countdown begins. The promise is made. The door is open. And the world waits for the moment the truth finally steps into the light. Because when Kyrie speaks without restriction, basketball history won't just be corrected. It will be rewritten. If you followed Kyrie's journey through the highs, lows, drama, and triumphs, now it's your turn to weigh in. Do you think the truth behind the Cleveland era will finally reshape how fans view that championship run? Do you believe Kyrie's side will change LeBron's legacy in any way? And what details do you think he has been holding on to all these years? Drop your thoughts below, hit like if you want the full story to finally come out, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of one of the most explosive behind-the-scenes revelations the NBA has ever seen.